Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us. We just give it a couple of minutes just for people to trickle in.
How you all doing today, ladies?
Happy Wednesday is what I'm gonna say.
I feel like it's a little bit tiring because Black History Month has started like quickly, and then you're thinking next week is like the 20th, but it's just but it's all good. We're here, you know.
This year has flown by. It's Christmas soon. Can you believe it? Like the year's done in a few months.
That's literally. I'm like, I need to leave the country again.
Oh, amazing. But excited for this?
Yeah, amazing. No, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. My name is Joao. I'm the content lead here at the Women in Tech World series. Thanks so much again for joining us and our speakers today for an insightful panel discussion on engaging underrepresented talent in partnership with Black Recruiters Network. I'm now delighted to introduce your host, Arsema, Fessehazion, founder at Black Recruiters Network, to lead the session.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us and thank you for the intro, Zhao. As you mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Black Recruiters Network. We are a community organization made up of Black professionals in recruitment, talent acquisition, HR, D&I, people teams, anything and everything in the world of recruitment. So we are super excited to bring this kind of panel discussion today on, it's not a pipeline problem, engaging underrepresented talent, and doing so in collaboration with the Women in Tech World series. This is something that has been in the works for a good few months now. And it's something that we're looking to do more of in terms of facilitating these conversations and really honing in on what more we can all do within this space of recruitment to kind of drive a more like diverse and equitable tech industry, but also recruitment process as well. So to get started, I would love to introduce you to these lovely ladies that have joined us on this call today. And let's kick off with Kianna. Do you want to do a bit of an introduction on yourself for everybody?
Yeah, of course. Hi, everyone. I'm Kianna. It might say on the screen Briggs, LDN, MBW. Sorry, it's my work email. My first name isn't Briggs. So I'm Kianna Briggs. I am the Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Manager for an advertising agency. I'm also a proud member of the BRN network, and I'm also their social media manager. So yeah, that's a bit of me.
Amazing. And who wants to go next? Kendal?
Sure, I don't mind. I am Kendal. I work at Depop. I've been there for almost 3.5 years now. I'm a senior talent partner, so I manage all areas of recruitment, every single type of role you can think of. I also manage our employer brand and our diversity and inclusion strategy as well. I'm also a co-chair for the Black at Depop ERG, which launched January this year as well.
Amazing. And introduce yourself, Alicia. We know you've got accolades to you.
Yeah. I'll keep it short. So my name's Alicia Richardson. I'm also a proud member of BRN as well. And I'm also the founder of my own community, Black Create Connect. And I also own and run Create Connect, which is an inclusive employer marketing agency as well. My background's in diversity and inclusion recruitment. I'm a TEDx speaker as well. And we have collaborated on many occasions with both BRN and Depop. So this feels like a nice full circle moment. So thank you for bringing me on.
Amazing. Well, thank you all for taking the time to jump on this lunch session with us. And we hope everyone listening finds it kind of insightful. If you do have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. We're able to see them on this side. And we'll be taking questions kind of like throughout, but also at the end as well. Perfect. And there's already a question in there, but we haven't started yet. So we'll wait for it.
I love that.
We'll wait to come back to it. So I guess to sort of start with, obviously, you know, we've titled this session, It's Not a Pipeline Problem, Engaging Underrepresented Talent, because so often, you know, we hear in terms of why we're not seeing diverse applicants or diverse people in going through interview stages, that it's a pipeline problem. And there's quite a lot of, I guess, like misconceptions in terms of like what that means, but also how, I guess, to address that as well. So I guess I want to just start with Kianna. I guess like from your point of view as a DI manager, what kind of misconceptions have you heard about, or do you generally hear that people use in terms of this pipeline problem issue?
Yeah, so I think it boils down to people always assume that it's the recruiter's fault why there isn't like diverse applicants in the process. And I always say that it's not just recruiters. I'm biased because I'm very passionate. I'm an ex-recruiter, and I just get really frustrated when people blame us. Like it's not just us; it's the whole companies, the employer branding that they're putting out there. For example, the hiring managers, what they're looking for, where you're sourcing your candidates from, etc. And I think people assume that one, me, for example, I had a magic wand and I was just able to find diverse talent. They didn't really see the work that went behind looking for diverse talent as well. So I think it's a combination of a lot of things. And I think if you look at your actual recruitment strategy from right from when you advertise a job all the way to when a person is interviewing for a role, that's when you'll find diverse talent. And sometimes it might take a bit longer. But if you're looking to actually diversify your teams, it should take longer. It's not just a LinkedIn job. So as you can see, I used to get very frustrated as a recruiter about it.
Out of curiosity, it's a bit of a tangent already, so sorry guys. You know when they say like it takes a bit longer, how best can teams kind of factor in that time it may take to build up that talent pool to for it to align to when they're going to be hiring, as opposed to like it being a quick, we're hiring and oh my god, we need to like find diverse talent?
Yeah, so it shouldn't be like a tick box exercise. That's not why we're hiring diverse talent. I think if you get out of the notion where you're just hiring for the sake of ticking a box, from when you first start, before a job even comes live, you should be looking at your candidate pipeline and looking at your candidate pipeline. Is it diverse? And if it's not diverse, start from the very beginning. Start tapping into different communities. LinkedIn is great, but there's more out there than just LinkedIn. What events are you going to, for example? And I always say that time to hire, I'm an ex-recruiter, so time to hire was always drilled into me. And it's when I moved internal did I realize that time to hire, yes, is important, but in my opinion, having a diverse shortlist is probably more important. And if you think about it, if you hire the same people constantly, the same people will leave, so your retention stats are low. Why don't we look at hiring the right people for the role, and then hopefully it'll be a diverse shortlist, and then you'll find that there'll be a change in your pipeline. Just like a little talent life cycle. Keep focusing on it.
Very true. And I know, Alicia, especially on this topic, this was kind of like a key area that even sort of took you to the journey and the career path you've taken at the moment in terms of launching BCC, Create Connect, going into D&I and employer branding. Just for anyone who maybe isn't familiar with your journey, do you want to give us a bit of an oversight of just how that's been and how you found it?
Yeah. So my journey's kind of been inspired by my own experiences and what I've seen around me. So I've worked in all three angles of recruitment. For context, I've worked agency side where we're just hiring for the cash, and we've also done I've also done consultancy side where we're putting projects, and I've also worked in-house as well. And what I noticed, so the consistent challenges that I noticed when I worked agency side was that candidates that felt safe being placed through me from underrepresented backgrounds used to contact me to say, Alicia, this place is hell that you've hired me into. And I had no control of that. Hence why I was like, I can't do agency side anymore because I can't vouch for all of these companies that I'm hiring for. And then also, when I went in-house or consultancy side, I then had my own experiences. And then I realized, oh my goodness, this place is the most diverse place I've ever worked, but it's the worst experience for me as well. So again, best believe when I left that workplace, I told everybody that I knew. So when there's one bad experience, everyone else is going to know about that. And that can not just ruin your employer branding, but that can also harm your business long term because experiences are traumatizing, right? So sometimes people just share them to warn others, don't go there. And then also what I noticed in particular when I worked with advertising agencies was when they made decisions on more mid to senior level roles, they were always making decisions based on what they felt looked good. So that was always based on them coming from certain schools, certain backgrounds, having certain patterns of experience. which then naturally excluded particular groups, right? Because they may not have had those opportunities earlier on in life. So in my journey, I've had to do a lot of trying to change the mindset with hiring managers in the process. And it's been successful. But one of the things that I noticed is that if I'm working with hiring managers one-on-one, that's not impactful enough. I need to find a way for the community to know how to represent themselves in a better way so that they can grasp onto opportunities and they know how to navigate it. But then also on the flip side, employers need to know how to consistently connect. So even when they're not hiring, when they do post a job on a job board, our community is not looking like, who are they? Or is this a tokenistic action? Because they've got a relationship. So I'll try my best to balance out both, because I've kind of seen all areas. I've worked in DEI, I've worked in recruitment in all areas. So I just have that kind of overarching passion to ensure that employers are doing what they need to do for themselves to attract wider talent. And also the community are engaging with employers and upskilling themselves so they're able to tap in to the opportunities when they come.
That's very true, and something that you said actually resonates to the work that we do at BRN as well. It's very much like, as much as we will do the deep dive work with companies in terms of like making sure that their processes are kind of fair, equitable, and able to attract that talent, there is the flip side of the talent themselves, just knowing how to put them in the best positions and put themselves the best foot forward, essentially. So we do look at it both sides, but in this conversation, we are talking on the employment side. So coming on to Kendal, like I know within Depop, you've been doing a lot of work within this area to like diversify pipelines and try different means to doing so. But I kind of want to take it back almost to the beginning of that journey. I guess, what were some of the factors that made the business realize and the talent team realize that there was a particular issue within this space of like diversifying the pipeline itself?
Yeah, so I think I joined Depop about 3.5 years ago, and as soon as I joined Depop, one of like my first tasks was to look at the organizations we'd partnered with before. So like diversity and inclusion organizations that we'd partnered with previously that had like assisted us engaging in engaging with underrepresented communities. So Depop was already kind of on that journey. They'd already kind of points were kind of made their plans, made their goals, and I was kind of coming in to rejig everything. But I think the moment is always when you kind of look at a team and realize that each person looks the same, each person's from the same background, or they all know each other. I think because Depop was a startup as well, probably initially a lot of the hires were like friends of friends or people that knew each other. And that continued probably to be like a trend until we got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and we just couldn't do that anymore. So I think the key is to keep kind of evolving hiring strategies with the times. So like, for example, if we look at our creative department, we're not just looking for people with a degree in graphic design and 8 years experience in-house at a brand, especially following COVID. That type of profile is so rare now. Everyone's kind of CV looks slightly more jumpy, and people have had a lot of different stints at different places, especially within creative. So we're now evolving to, we want to see creatives who are self-taught and who have a kind of broad wealth of experience across different types of areas and agencies and different brands. And I think that used to be a no-no in recruitment, like jumpy CVs is something we used to kind of say no to. But at Depop, we're kind of evolving to accept these types of profiles. And I think as well, the thing about Depop is that each department has its own underrepresentation. So for example, underrepresented gender identities in engineering data has always been a challenge. So we had to kind of not look at Depop as a whole, but look at each individual department and how we could customize recruitment efforts to diversify each separate area, because they all need different things in order to balance like our diversity across the business.
That's a really interesting take, actually, in terms of like splitting it up between, I guess, functions and departments as well. I guess, is that something that is resonated to what maybe is happening in your role, Kianna's, or with the clients that you work with, Alicia? Is that similar mindset or approach?
Yeah, we do something similar. So I'm part of a larger group agency, and then within the group agency, we've got different brands. So what I learned joining here is that all the brands work very differently, and they view D&I very differently, and they view recruitment very differently. So it's kind of tailoring finding where are the gaps basically, and what support do they actually each need. And with us, we have specific targets that are related to gender and ethnicity, in particular Black talent. And those targets are on a 3-year basis. So when I joined as D&I manager, we were in year 1, and I realized that we've got a long way to go. We're not there yet. So the things that we put in place are tailored towards hitting our goals and our metrics. But then also there are other elements that I might focus on disability, for example, because that team might need it. So it depends on what the team needs, but also you've got to be mindful of what the actual company needs and what's in our industry. We work in advertising. Advertising isn't very diverse. A lot of the people at the top don't look like any of us on screen today. And it will take a journey. It takes years to change that. So we had to start somewhere. So we look at Black talent in particular, which is where we come in with different programs that we implement as well. And then we look at what the industry says and how can we kind of match things so that they align together.
So from my perspective, and kind of looking at where my clients are at, I always try to focus on their business growth areas, because there's so many spectrums of diversity. Of course, my specialism is Black and ethnic communities. But I always work kind of backwards and always think about, okay, where are they trying to grow? How is this going to be beneficial to them? So, for example, I work with a lot of smaller boutique advertising agencies, and funnily enough, actually, one of them that I'm working with at the moment, they asked me to do a video for them for a pitch this week for like a big client, right? And to talk about the DEI work I'm doing to help them win the pitch, right? And so far it's all positive. And what I've learned and seen with clients, again in advertising space in particular, is that if they're not showcasing that they understand society and the way culture's moving, then they're likely to not get the work again, and they're likely to lose work. So I think that that's where the value is for them. But I think for anyone that's out there that's within their company, you need to understand and link the value of diversity and inclusion, or whatever strategy you're putting together with hiring, with them. One other thing that I will say is, Kendal mentioned something earlier, right, about hiring managers. Well, Depop starting off as a startup, so you kind of hired your friends and everything. And I used to be in-house and say, that's so biased, that's so wrong. And the thing is, I get it is wrong, but as a solo founder, I 100% get it, because you want to feel safe. You want to feel like you can trust someone. You want to feel like it's your baby, right? And I've had people that have worked with me that I'm like, I feel safe, and people that I don't, and I've taken a risk, and it's like, this is my money, this is my time, this is my reputation. So I understand it from that perspective. So because of that, and that mindset, as a business grows, naturally when it comes to leadership positions, there's still that element of trust that needs to be built. Hence why it's important to have those in-person events and interactions and these type of situations where trust can be built, relationships can be built, so people can be hired based on trust. Because I understand it when it comes to senior roles, to be honest, but it's about us being able to integrate more with those that are making those decisions so you can understand them. One client that I worked with a couple of years ago, they hired diverse only because they trusted my word on individuals that didn't even come from advertising. Like a lot of candidates that don't come from advertising, or even in tech spaces, sometimes they have proven experience in other areas, like Kendal mentioned, freelance and self projects, but they wouldn't have been given the opportunity without that element of trust and relationships, which is why your role, our team, is important, and also yours as well, Kianna, yours as well, Kendal, and mine. So.
It's very true, but I guess with the trust, it's probably going to be those instances where it does take time to build. And so, especially if we're coming from the standpoint of, people are kind of set in the ways of how they've maybe been doing recruitment, and they're going to be looking to explore alternative options as well. Obviously, that level of trust hasn't really been established yet, because they're just sort of starting on that journey and maybe doing a bit of a trial and error, seeing what's out there, seeing who they can support with. But before they go full in, I guess, in understanding like how best to navigate that, I guess from a point of they've identified that like there is a pipeline issue and they want to address that, what would be, I guess, like just some easy first steps to take to be like, okay, how do we now go from, okay, this is the problem, to like starting to find a solution for it? Like, what would be the kind of questions to be asking yourselves or asking the business? This is open to anyone.
So my response to that, when I've done that previously, was I sit down with the hiring managers and I strip down the actual objectives of the role. What do you want this role to achieve? Because how it's achieved can be done in different ways. Like, you have seen it in a particular pattern for the past however many years, so you think it can only be done in that way, right? But let's go back to the objectives. That is how I've managed to start off, because then what we can do is adjust how we look at the scorecards, making sure that that in itself in the process is agreed upon. And when hiring managers are submitting their scorecards, they're not seeing each other's, because if they discuss it, there's an element of influence from people that you think are more senior to you. Also ensuring that if you are in a recruitment position, schedule time straight after. So if you're booking an hour interview, schedule that extra 15 minutes for that scorecard to be done separately. Otherwise, it may get lost. They may just be guessing and remembering just parts of that process. And then also ensuring that you track where candidates are coming from. The data is super important. So what I've done with organizations that I've previously worked with on like talent pooling is, when we're hiring for roles, all candidates have to fill out a survey that tell us what platform they came from. They can share their personal characteristics. They don't have to. They also say what level role they went for, what department. And over time, what you find is that you see a trend of, okay, people that are neurodiverse typically come from these platforms or these communities. Or you might see that Black individuals in tech, they typically come from these spaces, which means it gives you a clearer picture as to where you need to invest more time if you want to attract more people from that group. And then you can also look at your data to see the trend in who actually makes it through the process. That is what I would say with that particular survey. Always give it to candidates at the end of the process. So even if you've offered them or you have rejected them for whatever reason, give it to them, because then you can see the trend and you can show that to your hiring team and say, look, we're actually hiring way more ethnic talent since we've started to invest more into these communities, as you can see from the data. So that speaks loudly.
And just to kind of continue on that theme as well, because I know, Kendal, as you mentioned, that like from when you started, was it 3 years ago, to I guess where things are now, you've been looking at what each different team needs and how best to kind of support that from a talent pipeline perspective. I guess, what changes have you seen within just like the TA function to kind of accommodate that over the past couple of years?
Oh my gosh, we are like always evolving our recruitment process so that we can engage with underrepresented communities. There's so many things we've put in place in the last year, 2 years, because I think we kind of understand as well that a business like Depop, we have to kind of have bold ideas. And I think we know that like innovation comes from diversity of thought and people from different backgrounds and different experiences. So it's so crucial for us to have DEI and talent as like one of our key priorities. It is actually one of our main priorities for our annual operating plan this year, and it was last year, and it will be next year as well. But one thing I wanted to mention, the whole like tick box exercise. So that's never the goal, but I do think there's a balance in finding, like putting metrics in place and putting KPIs in place. And I want to make sure people are not confusing that with tick boxing, because we definitely have like metrics in place to ensure that our pipelines are diverse. But I don't necessarily see that as like a tick box exercise. For example, we implemented something called the Mansfield Rule. I'm not sure if I'm sure you guys have heard of it. But we've implemented this not just so that we can hire females and hire Black talent, but just so that we can make sure that our hiring managers and interviewers are seeing a diverse pipeline and they're seeing candidates from every different underrepresented community. But we've tailored this to each department. So for example, knowing that our key pain point within engineering and data is hiring females or underrepresented identities, within those recruitment processes, we now have put in place that we must have 30% underrepresented identities at talent partner screening, at hiring manager screening, at task stage, before we even move on to the final stage. But the key is still to hire the best person for that role. It's just ensuring that, you know, the pipeline is diverse and that we are reaching those communities before we make that final decision. And we've put that in place, not just within engineering data, but across all our other functions as well. One of our key things was also to hire more underrepresented talent in manager positions as well. So we've put the Mansfield rule in place for all manager level hires as well. So that's something that's actually worked really, really well. Something else that we implemented was a sourcing sprint. So this just ensures that we are making sure our opportunities are seen by underrepresented communities that may not have seen our opportunities before or that may not know about Depop. So the way we do this is, before we even make a role live, we will headhunt on different platforms, but only focus on underrepresented communities first, so that we are building that pipeline first and then trying to kind of get these people into the hiring process before we open that role externally. That is also something that's worked extremely well as well. We also have our referral schemes as well. This works really well with kind of allowing people to give back. And then obviously partnering with different organizations as well. Black Career Connect has been amazing, and just kind of allows us to sort of think outside of the box as well. So with Black Career Connect, we've managed to use content creators, which has helped us reach different or a wider network, I guess, and within areas that, you know, they might not have kind of looked at Depop's job board. So targeting individuals on like Instagram, TikTok isn't something we've actually done before. You'd probably think we had with Depop, but we hadn't. So opening up things like that has been really, really helpful. And it just allows us to actually build stronger bonds and like longer term relationships with potential candidates as well.
Can I just piggyback off what Kendal said as well, actually? I love what you said about being like targeted in your recruitment approach, because I think some people always get confused with like positive discrimination and positive action. And when I moved away from recruitment and into my D&I role, I kind of made it clear to the team that positive action is part of your role as well. If you see there's a problem in a team, it's not positive discrimination if you're applying positive action, but to what Alicia mentioned about the data, it's having that data back it up. And I think that's where a lot of people fall short, because you're not seeing what data is actually saying. If your team looks like one person, for example, you can actually go out and target a certain type of person. And I think it's really important that we're being very specific in what we're looking for. And why we're actually looking for that. What is the reason why you want to diversify the team? There's no point in just saying you want to diversify the team. What does that actually look like? Are we looking for more Black talent? Are we looking for more women, for example? Are we looking for more disabilities? What are we actually looking for, and why are we actually looking for that as well? And then when we're looking at the actual interview process, is what adjustments are we making for those kind of people? You know, what access are we giving people with disabilities? You know, if someone's got dyslexia or ADHD, are we sending them the recruitment questions beforehand to give them the chance to actually answer them? And then we've got to be really specific in our recruitment approach and what we're actually looking for. And that's where you'll see a difference. That's what I found anyway.
Can I just add one more point as well to that as well from what Kianna, because I just had a triggered thought. In regards to positive action and positive discrimination, it comes up a lot as a confusing thing. So just to give like a clear example that's been recent. So I've recently been pipelining for an account executive internship for one of our clients. And I was going through the applications last night and the day before. And what positive discrimination would be is if I see someone that's really good for the role and I take them out because they don't fit the box of the diversity group that we're trying to target, right? That's discrimination, because I'm saying no to them even though they're qualified for the role. Whereas the positive action in itself is me targeting and sharing the job across particular platforms so it reaches them. But it's still found other groups as well, and they're great. So it's fine. We can still keep them in that process. But that's just so people understand the clear difference between the two, because it's always confused. So
yeah, I needed that clarification, because I was just about to ask, like, what's the difference between them? But you jumped into it, so thank you, Alicia. But I think a common theme with, I guess, the approach that Kendal's been taking at Depop, and like obviously us in like me and KB in BRN and Alicia with BCC as well, I think it's safe to say we all love kind of communities, building communities, and working with communities as well. But I will maybe caveat and say it's maybe easy for us to reach, I guess, like underrepresented talent or Black talent, because there is a bit of maybe like overlap maybe in experiences or just some
Mm.
kind of like shared shared vibes there. But I guess for maybe like talent teams or people who are looking to build like those relationships with communities, but maybe aren't part of those communities, but still want it to feel like authentic and not just like logo grabbing to make it, you know, to advertise roles to increase the talent pool. Like, what are some best ways that people can go about this? You know,
I always say I hate the word authentic. I think I'm in DE9 now. The word authentic really irks me. And speak authentic self. Yes, I'm going to use it for this context. I think being genuinely authentic in why you want to go to those communities, I think is really important. And if I use BRN as an example, is understanding that you're not part of our community, but you can be a great ally. And being an ally means if we've got an event on, come to our event, for example, see what we're putting on. Um, Financially, it always helps as well. Put your money in your pocket if you can. But I think being authentic in why you're actually there, and it's okay if you're not part of our community. We understand that, but we do need allies as well to help us and support us. And I recently had I did a blog recently with one of a recruiter she's white, but her family is black. So her husband's black, for example. And she said, Kianna, I know I'm not part of the community, but I'm really generally interested in it. And having that one-on-one conversation with her made me look at myself and think, you know what, she generally is interested. And she wrote a blog about me and BRN, which was great. So I actually knew she meant it. But I think is put your money where your mouth is. Actually invest in those communities. And if we're looking at recruitment agencies, for example, what recruitment agencies are you partnering with? Are they diverse in their teams, or are they just saying that they're diverse? And I always think, why are you not diverse in your teams if you're talking about diversity? That's what I always ask them. And then with BCC, for example, you've got Alicia, who's everywhere. So are we investing in Alicia's platforms? Are we going to her events? Are we talking on her podcast, for example? You know, those sort of things. What are we actually doing? And it's okay if you're not part of the community, but actually standing up and say, you know what, I want to learn, that goes a long way.
You said so much, Kianna. that was like, no, literally, I completely agree with you. I think what I see, I'm trying to combat some things. So, for example, we might do an event at a company head office, right? And that looks great for them. But where are your employees? Why is there only 2 employees there, or just the panelists, and then everyone else is the community? That's not helpful, because that means that those 4 panelists have not the burden, but they have to then get to know all these 200 people. If there's more employees that are there, then they can just build those relationships internally, first and foremost. And to be honest, I'll be honest, I'm yet to see any company we worked with where there's like, actually, no, to be fair, with Depop, our last event as well, they came through. I have to be honest, the management mixer, because the head of people was there, head of talent was there was the people from different departments were there, and they just came just to be there and meet people and build relationships. We need to have companies that are willing to do that first and foremost. I also think that companies need to not be afraid of us, and let me explain what I mean by that. I think because of I'm quite open and transparent. They confide in me a lot about some of their issues, especially, I'll be honest, white older men that are CEOs, MDs of companies. So they'll say, how should we talk to the community, Alicia? How should we approach them? Should we say this? Should we do that? I'm just like, just relax and get to know who's in front of you. You've got to know me, right? And we're fine. I didn't harm you. I haven't offended you, because you've got to know me, right? And I always say, I guess the way you build a relationship with me, that's great, but it's not going to be the way you build a relationship with every single Black woman. So just get to know them. So what that does also mean is that companies need to make active efforts to go out to events that have the majority different community members. So that doesn't mean it's always an event taking place at your office, but there's Black Tech Fest taking place tomorrow, for example. Is anyone going there? That's not Black from your company. That's going to be just meeting and connecting with people. There's so many events that take place throughout the whole year that have concentrated communities. So go into their spaces, make yourself uncomfortable. You build those relationships and understand them, because really and truly, even though, yes, Arsema is a community leader, and Kianna, you do DEI, and also Kendal, that's back at Depop as well, and myself, for us to even push forward and drive, what we're doing, we need to understand the people in our community. So I consistently try to connect with them, get feedback, understand what they need from us, and feed that back to companies. But it'll be easier if companies also did that themselves. Like they will save so much more money, and that's not helping us. But if they just reached out to podcasts that have predominantly, you know, different types of audiences and says, hey, I want to come on and talk about what life is like here, or just talk about my journey, I want to give back to you. That is what we're talking about. And just a final note, an example is, actually I can shout him out, Faroon from BBC, head of BBC partnerships. I met him for the first time on Monday, and he made me cry because he listened attentively. When I go to a lot of company meetings, sometimes they're looking through you, and sometimes they don't understand what you're doing. He listened attentively. He follows through with everything that he said he will do from Monday till now. It's Wednesday, and he's offered his time and support to the point where now he's said he'll talk at our next event. Better not drop out now, Faroon. I've said it now publicly, so you don't. I'm joking, but no, but the fact that in that conversation he allowed me to feel seen, heard, and respected, that makes a difference. And even if you don't go ahead with a community partnership, don't ghost us, because we're going to continue to grow, and you're going to come back because it's happened. And you don't want to ruin that relationship. So just make sure that if it's not the right time for whatever reason, for budget or for, you know, internal selling in, communicate that and respect the community leaders, because they're doing this from passion usually. And it's discouraging when they have conversations with you and then you don't continue that conversation or don't explain the reason for it not going forward. So those are some key points. The list can go on, but we'll leave that to another podcast episode.
I also wanted to add one thing, a slightly different point from your last one, but you mentioned like internally, like not seeing like internal employees at like your events and stuff like that. This is actually a challenge, but I think it comes from just people maybe not having capacity to like do everything, or also just not knowing what their company is doing in terms of DEI. So I think it's really, really important to shout internally about what you're doing in terms of DEI, what initiatives you're planning, what's coming up, who you're partnering with, because there's been so many times where I'm doing events, but no one really knows what's happening, even though internal comms have gone out or whatever. But you really need to stress what you're doing, because it gets your internal community excited about what's happening. And the more excitement there is, the more they'll want to be involved in things. So I think, yeah, just a reminder, like whatever DEI initiatives you're doing, whoever you're working with, just shout about it internally. Make sure, you know, your employees know what's going on, and it just will build a stronger kind of connection. It'll probably them to kind of self-educate as well and invest more in what you're doing. I think like showing your investment in DI is super, super important, not just internally, but also externally as well, whether it's on social media platforms or whatever. But yeah, just a reminder to actually get your workforce excited about what you're doing as well is really helpful.
Can I quickly piggyback off Kendal now as well? Look at me, piggybacking off all of you guys. What I love what you just said as well is I also call it like a domino effect. And one thing that we can do as recruiters or D&I professionals is usually whenever there's an event at my company, for example, I post about it on LinkedIn. And in that way, that someone who's either interviewing for a job at my company or has seen a job and wants to interview, they're like, oh my goodness, that person actually cares about D&I at the company. You guys are doing something. So you kind of have to have your own sort of like brand ambassadors. And when we're looking at the company's employer branding, whenever I was in the recruitment team, yes, I'm privileged that I'm a Black woman, so naturally my network is very diverse. But I would always go the extra mile. So I would always post about things that we're doing at our company to attract diverse talent. And a lot of the applications that I got through weren't through the website. There were people reaching out to me directly on LinkedIn, say, Kianna, I saw this. I would love to. Can you reach out to me? Can you help me? And I'm always like, absolutely. So I always say is to my recruitment team who weren't very diverse, you got to look at what your personal brand is also saying about you and the company. And if you're not saying anything apart from, hey, I've got this job, please apply here, nobody wants to apply for that job. But when they see, oh my God, we've got this event for Black History Month, we've got this event for South Asian Heritage Month, we've got this event, we've got this training, they're like, okay, this person actually cares about DEI, which means the company cares about DEI. So you've got to really invest in your own personal branding. And yes, we're recruiters, yes, we're talent professionals, but also when you're applying for a job, I do it anyway. I go on LinkedIn straight away and I look at what they're doing. And if they're not doing anything exciting, I'm not going to apply. So please do invest in your own personal brand, invest in your company's brand, and you'll find that you'll get a lot more people reaching out to you from different backgrounds.
Sorry, I'll be 1 minute. I see my
You guys are answering my questions at this point.
Sorry.
It goes a bit all over. So on your point as well, Kianna, about companies, employer branding and marketing, the reason why I even started Create Connect as an agency in the first place was because I saw the issue of where we will do like a random job ad for a company for Black Create Connect and people won't engage with it. And then I'll look and be like, oh, that's why, because there's nothing else about you. You've just done a job ad. There's nothing else, and that's going to attract them to you. Hence why I thought to myself, okay, companies need to focus on employer branding. And then when I looked at employer branding companies that existed, I looked at how they approach it, and I just thought, man, like, again, you're looking like another LinkedIn. And LinkedIn is great, it's fine, but you're not actually doing anything. So the thing that I noticed, just like what you said, is I always had the highest applications. Like last week or the week before, me and Kendal spoke about the Apply with Audacity campaign, which we still owe you referral fee, by the way, BRN, so it's coming. But the Apply with Audacity campaign, it had such a high engagement in that short space of a week, and that was through my voice and through community voices spreading the word about roles. And it was a crazy response. Like, so that's one thing. That was just 1 week. So imagine your company is being consistently spoken about across the year in different ways. You might bring in different individuals, like smaller creators to come in, office tours, work in the office. I have gone in and worked in companies' offices to kind of get their vibe and get their feel, so I can actually understand what type of culture they have. Get creators to do that focus on careers. Like, let them vouch for you properly. Also ensure that you're not just connecting with communities, but build relationships for community leaders. Host dinners, get to know them, talk about why they're doing what they're doing. Like, really invest in them long term. Even when you're not hiring, that is where you will see a ROI, because I promise you, companies that have been, I guess, consistent with their branding when it comes to DEI, but even when they're not hiring, when they do post a role, the level of applicants that they get from diverse communities is going to be way higher than a company that doesn't do that. So that's what I will say. Sorry, very black.
No worries there. But just to touch on, I guess, maybe a question that some people might have. I know sometimes I have it as well. When it comes to like engaging with communities and doing so for the purpose of like diversifying talent pipelines, there are so many communities out there. So many. So I guess what kind of ways or what ideas would you say to anyone listening that's thinking about like engaging with communities but doesn't really know like where to start or who to connect with, because there are so many? Is it just like trial and error? Is it, I don't know, looking at reviews? Like, what would be the approach you think people should take?
So for me, so Depop, we've worked with so many different partners, like DEI partners over the years. And I think we're finally at a point now where we know exactly what we need from a partner. You're never going to find the right one just like that. You have to kind of test different ones to know like how you work together best. What kind of size of, community do you need to work with? I think talking about Depop, like with our business, the size of our business, we work a lot better with a company that has a smaller kind of targeted community that allows us close connection with that community. We're not a huge company. We've got 450 people globally. A lot of people think we're a lot bigger, but we work better with a smaller kind of agile community that are able to kind of tailor their offerings to us, and we can really work hand in hand together to make things work. our hiring as well is very unpredictable. Like tomorrow we could be hiring for 10 roles. In a month, we could be hiring for 0. Like it really is up and down. So partnering with a company that's able to tailor their initiatives is really, really crucial in our success. Look at what your representation goals are. What types of, candidates do you actually need to target? So look at, the company's gender split of their community, their ethnicity split, the level of the professionals that are in that community. If you know that you don't hire for entry-level roles, don't partner with a community where the focus is, entry-level talent. It's not going to work. So things like that, making sure you align with what your needs are and the actual people within that community. The reach as well, their impact, if you're trying to target people, within the creative spaces or within marketing, then maybe partner with someone who has a bigger presence on social media. But also look outside of hiring as well. What other initiatives can you get from this partner outside of just helping with recruitment?
Mhm.
Will they collaborate with your ERGs? Will they come in and speak to the community? Do they do podcasts? You know what I mean? Like other creative things that can also help with not just hiring, but also your like long-term awareness and engagement, I think is really helpful, because there are partners that we had that maybe we didn't see the impact, but maybe we didn't see the impact 2 years ago, but we're seeing it now just because of the awareness that they built up over time. So I think those are the key things to think about. Obviously, think about like reputation, credibility, that sort of thing as well. But I think you really have to look at what your business needs and not just go for those like big name, huge, large communities. Like look at what your business actually needs and who can tailor their offering to your business, I think is really helpful.
Yeah, I think on that as well, I think what I've learned leaving recruitment and going to DEI is very sexy. And we're all recruiters, so we know what the term sexy means in that context, in that it's always like a nice to have. And like Kendal said, a lot of people see a big name and like, yes, we need to partner with them, but you're actually not realizing why you need to partner with them. I think you be very intentional with why are you want to partner with that company? What are their values? Do their values align with what you're trying to achieve? And I love what you said as well, Kendall, about not just partner with someone just to hire, because they can offer so much more. They can offer education, they can offer workshops, they can offer training, etc. And the reason why you partner with companies is because you want to do better. And there's something so powerful about giving back as well. Have an investment, but also give back to that partner. But I think you've got to be intentional why you actually want to partner with that company, and it hasn't got to be the biggest name in the world. It can be someone that's just started out, for example, but you agree with their values and what they're trying to work on. And don't look at D&I as having to achieve absolutely everything straight away. What I've learned about D&I is that there are 9 protected characteristics, and you can't tick all of them off straight away. You've got to have a core focus, and being right. And when you're saying no, actually say no, we can't do this right now because we're focusing on gender, for example, or focusing on disability, and then align yourself with a company that actually focuses on that as well, and truly sees the vision in what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I was just going to add some that period of trying to find organizations to partner with. Like you can also just go off of vibes, because I've had calls with partners and I'm like, I'm just not feeling the vibe. Like I don't feel like they're really invested in what I'm trying to do here. Like I don't feel like they understand Depop as a business or a brand, and I just feel like it's not going to work. Like it's okay to do that, even with a company that has all these accolades and awards and everything. Like go off of vibes. If you're talking to, an owner of an organization or a community and you're really like connecting with them and you understand each other and you feel like, yeah, this could really work, like go with that. That's what I've done. And I feel like we're now at a point where we are exactly where we need to be, just from kind of going off of vibes. So that does also work.
I agree with you as well, because as a community leader, also there's companies that I wouldn't work with as well, and that sounds really like interesting, because we obviously money is a community, but there's companies I've actually said we're not the best fit for you, as well. So and the way I kind of came to that was I've identified that I've got a lot of creatives in my community. And I've got a lot of people that I feel like creative and tech really crosses paths as well. So there's a lot of creative and tech individuals in my community. I remember earlier this year, I had an architecture company approach me to say, hey, you want to hire more Black architects? And I said, do you know what? Let me see if there is any. Like, I thought, let me just see. And I put out a survey, and I think I had like one response, and they were aspiring, not really one. And I said, yeah, we're not the community for you, but look out for Black architects and find out what communities that they're a part of. Ask them. So work it backwards and speak to people that are the people you want to attract, because they're available online on LinkedIn, wear hair as well, and just say, what communities are you a part of? If you do that for about maybe an hour a week, you'll be surprised about the list of communities that you have. But what you want to ask as well is who they have in their community. So who is it, creative? Are they really corporate? What type of levels do they usually have? What events do they do? Because again, the events that we put on at Black Create Connect are not going to be for every company. I cannot see us doing the events we do at, I don't know, what's like a really, really corporate company like that you can think of. It's not going to be for everyone, basically. So I'm very kind of strict on that, only because what you want to do is, for me, I want to be able to refer other communities that are different, what we do, to those employers so we can still have impact. I would also say, if you're coming from an internal recruitment perspective and you're trying to understand, should I partner with this community? Really, like what Kendal said earlier, work with communities that are committed to impact. So it might be a thing where, in a partnership, we agree to say, we agree to say a certain type of, I don't know, we say, okay, we're going to work with these creators this year, we're going to do all these different things, this is how we're going to work, but it may not be working, for example, so we then switch it up there and then during the partnership. So work with agile partners that are willing to then say, switch things up for the purpose of impact versus doing the things because they agreed to do these things. So that's what I would say, just focus on that.
I appreciate everyone's insight, and also just very conscious of keeping to time as well, because we will be finishing at 1 o'clock. We'll respect everybody's time here and their lunch breaks as well. And we've had a couple questions kind of come through, but before I get to those, we've been having such a great conversation in terms of like how to attract talent, how to kind of diversify that. But really and truly, that's only part of the process. We've done all this work, we don't want it to go to waste. So then if we turn our attention for a couple of minutes to the retention side, we've invested time, worked with communities, looked at our hiring processes and brought these people on. What are just some key things that people need to think about when we're now looking internally? Because we want people to stay. We didn't do all this work for people to up and leave. So what kind of things can we do to just make sure that we're building that inclusive internal culture that's also like allowing them to thrive and not have the scenarios where we often hear be like Alicia said, I put people in jobs and they upped and left because it was hell. We don't want that. So what kind of things can we look at in terms of like internal culture wise?
Two things. So one thing that we do, I think a lot of companies have brilliant ERGs. That's a great way to start, because I think the ERGs help bring that sense of community to a company. We have 6 in our agency, which is brilliant. When I first joined, we only had 4. And the ERGs are led by people who are genuinely passionate about an area. So for example, when I joined the company, I led a network called Heritage, which is for our Black, Asian, and ethnic minority employees. And what I loved about that community is that people that looked like me. So usually when you join a company, you look for people that look like you, and you give them a nod of the head. And what I was so grateful for is I saw people that actually looked like me, who could relate to what I was going through. It's hard being a Black person and working in a company sometimes. And I love that I could actually speak to people and see what they were going through. The second thing that I would say is equity is massively important. So being fully transparent with you all, one thing that we found in our company is that our Black employees were leaving at a much faster rate than everyone else. And when I saw that stat, I was alarmed. I mean, I could see it from the actual eye, but when I saw the actual data to prove it, I was like, okay, what have we got to do to support them? So when we looked at their exit surveys, and we held focus groups, we found that people were leaving. Again, the authenticity word came up a lot as well. They couldn't be themselves at work. A lot of it was because they were, one, afraid to ask for a pay rise, for example. Some didn't feel they could speak up in meetings. A lot of it was because they didn't know what their promotion pathway looked like. And sometimes in the Black community, for example, we're not as confident as everybody else. So what we did is we put a program in place to support and retain our Black employees, particularly at the manager level, because the manager level we found was the hardest level to progress. For some reason they couldn't get past the manager level. And the program offers external career coaching opportunities, workshops, training, community. We gave them guidance on how to go to a networking event. They'll all come into the Black Tech Fest tomorrow with me. Do you know what I mean? So really investing in their development within the agency. And that really helped with our retention stats because it actually showed that we were really trying to put the work into their future. And it wasn't a case of singling them out, it's because we saw that they were leaving at a much faster rate than everyone else. Naturally, people were like, what about other groups? But what I had to kind of remind everyone is that right now the data shows this, and I can only focus on what the data shows me for now. But it doesn't mean that in the future we can't focus on another group. But for now, we're focusing on Black talent because the data says they are leaving at a much faster rate than everyone else. So we're trying to create that equitable talent life cycle where they can actually thrive and actually succeed. Really, that was someone coming into my room.
I think from what I've seen, a lot of companies do what they think their employees want to see and do, and they don't listen. So again, something that I've seen work effectively is doing not just surveys, but deep dive focus groups. Whether you spend time doing that with HR or an external person, you find that they're much more open with an external person. But I've also had feedback from companies that I've gone into work with that when they've had people that are not necessarily from diverse backgrounds or typically or visually come in and do focus group sessions or training sessions, there's still that barrier because they don't feel like they're understood. So it's important to have the people that understand the experiences and can either demonstrate that through their work or through their lived experiences, and also ensuring that you bring your employees on that journey of growth with you. So when you do hear back, this is what we've heard, this is what we're trying to do, this is the training we're doing is action orientated versus a one-off day training, making sure it's embedded throughout their roles, throughout their levels, throughout what they're meant to do. And there's, again, loads of ideas, but the key thing to highlight is that a lot of the time, Black and ethnic communities are over mentored and under sponsored, which means that they're usually told what direction to walk into, but there's not a lot of people that are opening the door for them. So it's really important to have intentional sponsorship opportunities where people can progress, because if they don't feel like they can progress in an organization, they're going to leave, right? So having accelerator programs specifically for ERGs, and then also allocating them with sponsors that are in C-level that can understand their experiences and making sure that they can open up doors for them.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone. I know we've got about 2 minutes, so I've had a couple questions. I'm going to keep the time for like a minute on these. One of them was from Tracy, where I know previously we were talking about like positive action versus positive discrimination. But actually, Akbar asked, I guess, maybe if there's a way to re-summarize what the difference between them was. And then Tracy asked, can you share any sort of platforms that you use for positive action?
So as for platforms, so Tracy, do you mind just elaborating on that? I don't understand that question. I don't know if anyone else
like knows. Aside from LinkedIn, maybe like where we will source candidates.
Yeah, I guess so. If I would take the question as like aside from LinkedIn, I guess if you're looking to source diverse talent for a positive action, what other platforms could you use?
I always said to my recruitment team, and I made it a conscious effort, is what events are you going to? And what I mean by that is that I think sometimes I was also an agency recruiter, and LinkedIn was drilled into me that all you have to do is go into LinkedIn and source candidate you've done. When I moved internal, I realized that LinkedIn was only a part of my role. And I found that when I networked with more people, I was able to find more candidates that way. And then also people would see me post on LinkedIn and refer someone, be like, oh, I've got a friend, for example, for this role. That really made a difference. So to Tracy, who I feel like I recognize Tracy's surname. I feel like she was one of my recruiters back in the day when I was a recruiter. But to answer your question, Tracy, my advice would be to try and attend networking events if you can. I love that you're on this call because it means you want to learn. But try and attend different networking events. different career fairs, for example. Universities are a great way. So don't go to all the top universities. Go to open universities, for example. Try to tap into different networks, and that will definitely make a difference with positive action.
And just to add on to that really quickly, Tracy, Create Connect agency, if you want to ask us, we'll direct you to like communities, because we've got a lot that we refer to different companies. So just get in touch and I can refer some to you.
Perfect. Well, that does bring us up to the end of the hour. And Tracy said, yes, she is. She's sure I am.
Oh, it's been 7 years, Tracy. I remember your surname.
But that does bring us to the end of this hour. I want to say a massive thank you to our lovely ladies who have joined us to kind of share their thoughts and really delve into this topic of conversation. If you are looking to connect with some of the speakers, I will figure out how to do this, share the screen real quick, just so we're able to connect with everybody. So it should be on your screen, I believe, if I do this.
Yeah.
Is it on their screens?
Yes.
Some way, somehow.
Code.
So use these QR codes to connect with the speakers. I'll leave it here for a couple seconds. And then if you are interested in kind of facilitating more of these conversations, feel free to reach out to the team as well through our QR codes, or join our community here also. So thank you very much, everybody, for taking the time to join us on this webinar. We hope you have a lovely rest of your day. It's Wednesday, the weekend's almost coming up, and yeah, have an amazing time. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
I'm going to leave this here for maybe about another 30 seconds, and then I'll end the call. But feel free to leave if you've got things to do as well. But thank you, ladies, again, Kendal, Alicia, KBs. It's much, much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I realised I need Kianna and Kendal on a podcast episode. I don't realise why I'm a hand you both. It's weird. I was like, hold on a minute. Kendal. I'm missing Kianna. So we'll have to
Are we still live, guys? Sorry, I've got live in my
We
phone.
are, yeah. I'm going to take us out now.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.